Cool. Ron. Welcome to the Athletes Health Podcast here, talking to athletes, coaches, leaders, anyone we can learn some tips, tricks, tools from, level up the mental game, that mental performance, and ultimately improve both sports and life. And so today, with just kind of some connections on the internet, finding people and seeing who could inspire me too, I was fortunate enough to get in contact with Eric Degati. And Eric, you've been coaching, training for a long time. I'm really curious to just hear more of your background, your stories along the way of everything that you've gone through. But if you could introduce yourself a little bit more to the audience so they can kind of understand you and what we're going to be talking about today and everything of that sorts.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Gabe. So the backstory is I've been doing this for I'm on year 26 and done it in a lot of different capacities, from owning my own training facility for 12 years to being a coach and consultant for sports teams from the high school up to the professional level. And then my other hat in terms of education, in terms of training, coaching, and mentoring trainers and clinicians around the world and how they can become better and better serve their clients and athletes and so forth. So it's been a very cool ride that's brought me to some very cool places all over the world. And it's all basically about, regardless of whoever is the end user, about getting them to maximize, their potential.
And so, how did you get into all this stuff? That was really the first thing I wanted to understand from you, into the fitness, the coaching, the consulting, the whole realm. And because obviously you ebbed and flowed and you gained a lot of traction through certain points, right? Working with these teams that you're mentioning. So that was the first thing I was really wondering.
Yeah, it was, none of it was this contrived thing of saying I want to, eventually work with this team or this athlete or speak all over the world. It was, how I kind of fell into this as a profession was a couple things that were drivers. Some of them, very personal. One of them being that I always played sports, all growing up. Not a very good athlete.
Yeah.
Was didn't necessarily get the best DNA in the world to become a great athlete, but I always loved it and was around it, and what I always was a hard worker and enjoyed training, enjoyed the challenge of training. And then I got an episode of some really bad back pain in my early 20s, way too early to get bad back pain, where I slept on the floor for like 6 months, mostly just because I'm stupid and stubborn. And finally went to the doctor, and my mother said, you can't keep doing this anymore. I went to the doctor, and I went to just a general practitioner,
Mhm.
and he, after waiting 3 hours to get a diagnosis, he basically said, well, it could be anything. It could be slip disc, pinched nerve. And I'm like, really? That's the best you got for me? So I said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go fix it on my own. And I went to the gym and I just found every machine or exercise that said back on it. And I just did that. And I just did that. And then my back got better. I'm like, oh shit, this is pretty good. And then I said, you know what, if I'm going to invest this much time doing this, I want to know what I'm doing. And that led into more and more study, which led into, dabbling a little bit in competing in bodybuilding, which led to the gym I was working at saying, hey, why don't you become a trainer? Which I didn't really have a lot of intentions on doing, but I said, all right, I'll go get certified. And I, went out on the floor. And then as I, went through that process, realized like how low the bar was set and how little expectation people had for not only the industry, but themselves. And so that kind of propelled me to, want to be really good. And I said, I'm going to be one of the best at this. And so I just went to every course and read every book I can get my hands on. And that just kind of kept opening doors, one after the other to get some of these opportunities.
And when you're in your early 20s, were you just working, going to school, or what were you doing in that sense? Because I just asked because the thing I really liked about you too, Eric, and just kind of reading your bio and wanting to connect was because so in the athletic space, like so many athletes I know are like in school and any of the sorts, they don't exactly know what they want to go to, and like the training thing, like it's always an option. I wanted to get your viewpoint on that because I wasn't always, the best athlete either. So like I kind of fell right kind of in the line of what you were doing and kind of feel like I'm following your path. So that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, training has become this thing that I found with, because now I have a lot of the athletes that I've trained. They go to school, and what I want to, and I say, what do you want to study? They say, oh, I want to do what you do. And it's easy to see the jerseys on the wall and the cool pictures and the all that goes with it. But there's a lot of kind of uh, you know a lot of crap you got to shovel to get to those points, and you have to be able to kind of go through that. And then like I always tell when I coach and mentor young coaches and trainers, I said, like, you also have to have the guts to ask for opportunities, and then you
Yeah.
have to be good enough, to deserve them, right? So when I get called into an NFL team and they want to know, well, how can you help me? We have a training staff, we have strength and conditioning coaches, we have medical people. Like, what can you add? you know Unless you have an answer, you don't deserve to be in that room. I worked all that time, and while everybody else who were the other personal trainers at the gym I was at, while they were golfing or napping or going to the mall, I was reading books, I was taking courses, I was taking every dime I made and reinvesting in myself so I could be ready for that opportunity. So I didn't know what that opportunity was going to exactly be, but I just knew I wanted to be as good as I can possibly be so I can allow myself those opportunities.
That's what I love to hear because I mean, the first thing I noticed too. I mean, I did notice the jerseys right away, but I noticed all the books in the background too, and how they're a key piece of that. So I assumed you take that with heart and you do try to level it up because what you just said of like, everyone might think, oh, it was lucky, or like, I always think, oh, maybe there's a tiny bit of luck involved, but it's more so the preparation for when the opportunity presents itself. You are prepared in that room and you can say what you want to say. So I love to hear that from you, first and foremost.
Yeah, I mean, there's always some level of luck of being able to get the right introduction, to be the right place at the right time. But then you also have to be good enough that you can actually do something with that opportunity. There's a lot of people who've had those windows that just let them stay open and never did anything with it. So I wouldn't allow myself to do that. I wanted to at least entertain the fact that I could give it a shot. And the worst thing that happened is they shut the door in your face. And I can't even count how many of those I've had. I've had way more of those than I've had doors open.
And okay, so just to clarify this, what were you doing when you had all the back pain? Like, what was your occupation?
So I was actually just doing sales on the side while I was going to school part time, and I like didn't kind of quite know what I wanted to do. And then I just went all in. I said, this is going to be it. And, uh, and so that's when I, changed careers and said, this is going to be the direction I'm going.
All right, and that's good to hear too, because I just know so many athletes that I talk to, or like, and anyone just in general, like the senior of high school, they're like, "What are you gonna go do?" And you're like, and they think you think you have to have it all figured out, but it'll have so many changes, and so that's why I was wondering that from you. And so, but then you committed. You said, "This is it helped me. I want to help other people." Is that kind of the process that I went through? Like, let's just figure it out, step it up.
There was obviously the attraction of always enjoying the idea of physical challenge and being able to make yourself better through that. And then, like, the other personal story I always tell people is, like, my grandmother ran a gift shop. She had Gabe, I think she had 6 major knee surgeries, including 2 replacements. She was in so much pain that she needed a morphine pump, in her body the last years of her life. And this was not, I mean, she wasn't an NFL athlete. She didn't get in a ski accident. She didn't have any of that stuff. Like, this is just somebody who got treated really shitty by the medical community and never really got what she deserved. And she was a vibrant, active woman who loved to travel and dance and all that stuff. And all that was robbed from her. And to see that taken away, I'm like, I want to save the next person. I couldn't save her. I didn't know enough to save her, but I'm going to save the next person from that fate, because it could have been saved if you got the right person at the right time.
And that's what you were starting to do in the gym that you were training at. You were kind of just
A hundred, a
help.
100%. I said, this, whoever's in front of me is going home to a family that they need to provide for, that they want to be the best, robust, vibrant version of themselves for. And so That's my job. My job's not to teach you cool exercises or show you how many different body parts and anatomy things I know and beat you up and make you sore. Like anybody can do that. My job is to figure out how do I get you the best you can possibly be. And I'm constantly figuring out ways to this day. That's why I keep adding to that bookshelf of how can I figure out another way? What am I missing that could possibly be the one lever that's going to make you better that I've missed?
Okay, so walk me through this then now, and this will kind of be a softball, you know, you take it how you want, Eric. But so now you're training, and how do you go from training to like the jerseys on the wall? Is this
Mm-hmm.
clientele and the other or like I don't know, that was just the first thing I thought of. But the other part of this that I really wanted to kind of get your viewpoint on was as things picked up or as you like you stated was putting in more of the work like reading more, getting more certs, just understanding the physiology and everything else so you can help the people out while maybe other people weren't doing all that, or like you said, they were golfing, they're having a little more fun. Not that you weren't having fun, but they were doing other stuff. How did you kind of like manage to keep doing that stuff when like it's going to help you out, but it seems like a lot of other people, or like maybe the pressure to do that stuff, you were maybe was a little bit more there, or like you were getting more confident as you went, like kind of different areas on that part of the journey of now we're in the gym and where does it go to? Kind of, does that kind of make sense, or is that way too much for you?
Somewhat, to a certain extent, it was, and this is where if you look at a lot of successful athletes, the most detrimental thing they can have is a plan B. And this goes with anything really in life. If you look at people who have been extremely successful, they don't necessarily have a plan B. Right. And Arnold Schwarzenegger came to America with no plan B. He wanted to be a star and he wanted to be a huge success. Howard Stern became the greatest radio personality because he didn't have a plan B. He was good. That's all he ever wanted to do since he was 5 years old. So for me, there wasn't necessarily plan B. Well, I'm going to try this. And then if it doesn't work, I'll go do something else. And that's unfortunately what happens to a lot of people in our industry. I call them 6 to 24s. What is the 6 to 24, Gabe? It's the stats show that most people get into the fitness industry and they're out in 6 to 24 months.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's heartbreaking because that's somebody who wanted to help people, who had a passion for it and just had no direction. They had nobody to guide them of how to actually make this a career. And so they fizzled out and they ended up going and doing something else. And so we lose a lot of talent that way because they just looked at this of, oh, I'll give it a shot. Where for me, it wasn't that. It was going to be, okay, whatever happens, I'm going to figure out a way to be as good as I can be at this.
All right. Yeah, that's good because and it kind of ties to the one thing that I always hear and that I think is very important to like have a mentor, someone kind of guiding you along the way. So you had that kind of all in mentality, no plan B, which is a good thing when you're kind of deciding back and forth. Oh, maybe I try this, maybe I try that. But this is what I want to do. We're going to do everything we can to make it happen. And that's what we did.
Well, the important part you bring up there is mentors. And so that's why, fast forward 25 years later, one of my biggest things that I want to leave as my legacy in my career is to be a mentor to other young coaches and trainers and clinicians and help them, learn from my mistakes so they don't have to go through the heartache that I went through. And I want to give back to honor the mentors that I had along the way. That when I went to a conference, I was the geek in the front of the room, like taking all the notes. And when it was over, I didn't just get up and leave. I got up and I hung out and I hovered and I asked questions and asked if I could follow up and stay in touch. And that's how I got to get a lot of the opportunities that I had and connect with these people. And those people became mentors to me because I said, if I want to be the best in the world, I got to see what they do and I want to see how they do it. And I want to hang around with them. And so I just became, there's a fine line, I always say, between being persistent and a pain in the ass. And I probably cross it, every day. And so when I started teaching for functional movement systems, Lee Burton, who was the founder, tells a story that, I used to call the office and he used to turn to the other co-founder and say, this guy from New Jersey keeps calling and he wants to be involved. Like, involved in what? Like, we don't really have a company yet. And I just said, whatever it is, I want to be involved. And I just would keep nagging him. And he said, enough. All right, fine. Then come to the next course and you can be an assistant and hand out manuals and help out. And that led to me being a lead instructor for them for the last 20 years. So that was just, that was people who took a chance on me and said, this guy's really passionate, and let's try to foster that, and let's try to get him in a lane where he can be successful. And that's why I'm grateful to them. And that's why I want to pay that forward.
And that's what you're doing now too, right? Is you're
That's a big part of what I'm doing
doing
now.
more
Yeah.
of the consulting, the coaching, the mentoring piece of it.
Correct. Yeah. We have a mentorship group that a partner and I mentor trainers and clinicians from around the world and show them how to be better at what they do, how to create better relationships with their clients, how to create better programs, how to create more sustainable systems so they can be successful and make a career out of this, and also be considered in the top 1% of the industry.
And is that locally or is that like anywhere?
That's international. We do a virtual mentorship that we have meetings every week, and they do case studies for us, and they have homework, and they have access to all our online content. It's been a really cool experience to then be on the other side of that as the mentor, to share everything we've learned, and then as well as everything that we've screwed up. So like I said, they don't have to do it themselves.
And we're gonna have to touch on that piece because I'm curious to learn how you did that and why you want to do it, which I know you said you want to give back and everything of the sense. But before we get there, like give me like one or two more major steps along your journey, or like what made you think you do want to start like doing that piece of it, or you were ready for that piece of it? Because that's kind of a jump there, but
Yeah, so so I always say I kind of have two hats. I have the hat of an educator and mentor. That's one complete path where I'm going out and teaching. I'm speaking at conferences. I'm doing the mentoring. That's one half of what my day is. And then the other half is coaching. With There's still a mentoring component, especially when I work more with kids and teams. But then there was the coaching side of things. So I've kind of had this dual role throughout my career of both sides of it, of kind of training the trainer as well as training the end user. Training the end user, especially when it came to athletes, and a lot of the demographic that you have is, when I'm a consultant for a high school team, it wasn't going in and putting up the workout on the whiteboard and saying, you're going to do these exercises and this reps and those sets. Like that I did, but like that was such a small part of what my real goal was when I went in to work with a team. My goal was to create a culture. My goal was to get kids to feel like they were part of something, and get kids to understand that someone actually cares about them being better than who they are, and let them see a little bit of their own potential. And the vehicle I used was strength and conditioning, but ultimately it was about building better young men and women, and doing that was a very rewarding experience.
and how do you do that through your vehicle of strength and conditioning? Because people take that so many different ways.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the essence of how, the first thing I'll tell anybody, if I'm working with a team, I'll address a team, I'll say like, how does this work? Like, Gabe, all right, it's day one, you're going to do a workout. Like, do you understand how this works?
Like the
The
workout
way it
itself?
works? Yeah, like, how does exercise even work? Like, how does training even work? It's a basic concept. It's basically you challenge yourself, your body and all its cells that have one job, which is to survive another day. They're going, oh my God, I don't know what you just did, but if you're going to keep doing that, I'm going to have to get stronger. I'm going to have to get more fit. That's why the first day of practice, you're out of breath, and the second day is a little easier, and the third day is a little easier. And your body's adapting to it. Your body got better because of the stresses that you put in. But there's a lot of, there's a lot of elegance baked into that, meaning that, okay, one is you have to be able to embrace challenge, right? It's not given to you. And the one lesson you can learn is that, once, if you want to move that bar or that weight or whatever it is, you're the only one that can do it, right? It's on you. It's you versus you. Now, the better you are, the better the person next to you gets. And then, I talk about how energy is contagious, and how everybody in the room is going to get better if one person in the room decides to get better. And then from there, it's also understanding that There's a level of expectation in terms of, I always say the conversation of seeds and soil. Like, exercise is not where you do a set of bicep curls and you have these beautiful arms 10 seconds later. It's you're planting these seeds for a harvest you hopefully get somewhere down the road. And so to have the diligence and the patience to say, I'm going to put in this work, that I'm going to, be doing this lifting program as a high school football player in January, that's going to hopefully pay dividends in December in my playoffs, requires the understanding that you need to have patience, you need to have trust, and you need to be able to be part of a process. And that's going to transfer to a lot of different things in life. And so if I can get you to understand some of these basic tenets, that's going to transfer over to a lot of different things that are going to happen in your life, whether it's in athletics or not.
And that's so good because it some of it is sometimes understood. Like if I go talk to teams or work with them, like I see them sometimes understand that, but there's a lot of pieces of what you just said, of where it puts the dividends in, of how it turns out later, and kind of especially now with like the phones, and just so much quick things to kind of almost preach those messages to the up and coming athletes is huge to do. What differentiates in the messaging that you preach to like the high school teams, like the one that you just said, versus like the teams in the NFL or any other of the pro teams that you've worked with or collegiate teams? Because I know there's some
So
differences.
there's huge differences. Like, so the high school kids are just trying to figure out who they are. They want to figure out where they fit in, and they want to be part of something. And that's why culture building is so big, so they can feel part of a community and a culture, and that they're part of something bigger than themselves that they can attach it to. Because it's hard to create an identity when you're 15, 16 years old. Once you're in the professional level, for the most part, you've gotten that identity, and that identity may or may not have been your choice, where you're the chosen one as an athlete. You were the best kid in your youth league and your high school team and your college 99% of the time.
Hmm.
And so this identity has been somewhat given to you, but now it's a matter of, how do I hold on to this? Because it can go away in a second. Meaning, as soon as there's a younger, cheaper version of you in the business of sports, you're gone. Or if you get hurt, you're one play away from the end of your career. So, what can we do to try to create an insurance plan to get you to keep playing and living this identity for as long as possible? That's a very different conversation. It's getting them to understand that some of this may have come easy to you because your DNA. But at some point, there's going to be a younger, cheaper, faster, bigger, stronger version. How are you going to deal with that? And can you continue to be available, which is your best ability as an athlete, is your availability? Can you be available by staying healthy and just being the person that can always be counted on? And so that's a different mindset. And now you have people that are providing for families, and so they have a lot more on their plate on that end, where they kind of know who they are. They need to hang on to it.
And when you're doing that stuff, like talking about that, is that in the strength and conditioning realm, or is that more kind of just coaching, consulting with a player, with a team, kind of walking them through some
That's
stuff?
that's through understanding how to best prepare yourself to be as robust as possible. Like, you're once you get to that level, the difference from a talent and physicality perspective is so nominal, except for the ones that are far and above the greats. But everybody's incredibly talented at that
Yeah.
level. Everybody's incredibly gifted and has the physical attributes. It's a point of saying you need to take care of yourself so you can keep doing this, and getting them to understand and appreciate that that is a 24-hour a day process, and getting them to understand that the little things that you're going to do, the little things of keeping up to make sure that you continue to move well and work on your mobility and work on your recovery and make sure your nutrition is dialed in and your sleep is dialed in and you manage your stress well, and that you're doing the things that you need to do, is the most important part for them to understand. And that's, some of that, what falls under the umbrella of strength and conditioning and performance has grown tremendously. It's not just,
Yeah.
how many reps and sets of bench it is. It's looking at all those attributes, and we become these kind of information filters that, whether it's the 50-year-old executive, or whether it's the high school kid, or whether it's the athlete in their, middle of their career in their late 20s, that says, well, I heard about ice baths, or I heard about, this supplement, or I heard about this training thing. What do you think? And you need to be able to filter that information and be able to say, okay, well, here's what the facts are about it. The reality is about it. And here's how it may be helpful for you. Here's where it may not be. And here's how, if you wanted to do it, how you would possibly implement it. And being able to be that information resource is just as much as being able to prescribe reps and sets of a bench press.
Uh-huh. And how you said the little things, that was probably the best thing that hit home with me because at that top level, right, it is working on those little things to put you on that little bit of the edge over the other people that you're competing with. Because like you said, they're the top of the top. But even with like the younger generation, like up and coming athletes, like it's still little things, right? I mean, it's all little things that they can do to set themselves apart, especially when it's like maybe people like you and me who maybe aren't probably gonna go to the league or anything. And how can you make kind of those little adjustments and make it the best? Thank you for tuning in to the Athlete's Health podcast. And I just wanted to share what we're all about. The Athlete's Health is an online mental gym helping athletes build confidence and resilience in both sports and life. Now, we've got something for everyone, whether it's the free newsletters, tips and tricks on them, or engaging social media content where we're broadcasting these episodes and sharing these actionable insights for you to take home and use right away. Athletes, coaches, parents, even teams, we're offering everything from these free resources to personalized coaching and monthly memberships in the gym. Plus, with partners who share our vision, we're creating multiple ways to check in and grow with us wherever you are. Now, if you have questions about the athlete's health or just want to chat about mental performance in life and just want to talk it up, reach out anytime. Now, together, we're building TAH Titans, those resilient, hardworking, and ready to conquer their goals people, athletes. Now, let's get back to this episode. Keep striving towards greatness. What I was gonna ask you, and then I realized it doesn't fit, and then you even answered it too. I was gonna be like, what are your thoughts on like ice baths and stuff? Just as like that's the other side of me. I'm just always like to talk about that. But you answered it, and where you said, Eric, that it depends on your situation. It depends on what you're doing, why you want to do it, where does it go? Because I was just thinking about all these different fads that you probably get asked, everything on the internet. And just to hear that, but it's like you said, you're the filter. You have to help do the individually.
And then it's a prioritization thing. Like I always use the analogy when I teach. If you've ever seen the story about the jar of life, and I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but there was a college professor who takes out this glass jar and he fills it with these rocks, and he says to the class, "Is that jar full?" And people raise their hand, "Yeah, it's full." And he says, "Okay." Now he takes out these pebbles, pours that in, which fills in the space between the big rocks, and said, "Okay, well, now is it full?" And he says, "Well, seems like it's full now." And then he takes out sand, pours that, goes in between the space between the big rocks and the pebbles, and now it's actually filled. And his analogy was looking at it in terms of life. The big rocks are your family, the people that you love, your health. Those are the most important things. Your pebbles are your career, your next level, your ring out in your life, your friends, your associates. And then the sand is like the little day-to-day stuff. The problem is we get caught up with sand. So if a high school kid comes to me and says, "Oh, what about this pre-workout? Or should I do this, arm workout?" And it's like, dude, you're up till 2 a.m. playing Call of Duty. You eat, you eat out of a car window most of your meals, and you show up to 30% of the workouts. Like, that's not you're literally going to just pee your money away. So like, why don't even bother? You need to get the big rocks in order first. Come to me when you're showing up to all the workouts consistently. You're eating well, you're sleeping, and you're doing the right things in that way. Then maybe I'll talk about it. Because at the end of the day, those things may make a 10% difference, but you're not even close to the point where you're going to even see a 10% difference.
Yeah, I've heard that story, the rocks thing, but I didn't know it was called the Jar of Life. That's what you called it,
Yeah,
right? The Jar of Life?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It's a jar of life story.
that's amazing because you just kind of almost you just refreshed my memory on it. And the your pre-workout story is hilarious. I mean, that's so many things. It's oh, let me try that arm workout, back and it's like, what else are you doing? The fast food thing, like you mentioned. It's crazy to know there's all these other different things that we could talk about too. But
Yeah, if you don't get your big rocks in order, don't even waste my time with your sand.
do you when like you're doing this stuff, Eric, do you have it probably depends on the situation. Do you have like patience for a little bit and like try to help out? I feel like you probably would if you are consulting, trying to help people out, like you try to help them guide them down the path. Is there any point when the people keep showing up 30% of the workout and you're like, yeah, okay, just get your pre-workout, dude. It's whatever. Or do you try and continuously help?
Then it's a matter of calling them out, but it's always done through one. It's always done with grace, and then two, it's always done through education. And it's asking questions. It's saying, okay, Gabe, if you want to be the best you could possibly be, do you think once a week is going to cut it? Like, is that really the best you could do? You're going to tell me that's the absolute best you could do? Now, I've been in situations, I've worked in schools that are, they're not in great areas, and these kids have tough backgrounds, and they may have to go work at the deli so they can help, put food on the table. They're going to have to go home and babysit their little sister, and they have situations where I get it. When I ask that question, they're like, Coach, I can't. I have to work. My parents say I have to work. Like, that's a different story, right? And we need to understand and appreciate. That's why I say it has to come with some grace and understanding. And I always tell them this always comes from a point of where, like, I'm looking out for your best. But then you can also complain to me when you're not doing the right thing. So I'll give you an example. So,
Yeah.
like, I'm sure with the mental performance stuff, visualization is a big conversation, right? So I always talk about visualization with athletes, and I say, all right, here's my visualization when it comes to nutrition. I say, all right, you're going to pick an athlete, whoever has the physique that you would love to have, right? So if you can kind of close your eyes, and if you said, you got some jerseys behind, if you said, if I could look like Kobe, if I could, it depends on the sport. They'll always have, their favorites. So baseball players say, I want to look like, Bryce Harper, or they want to look like Mike Trout or something like that. And football players will say that they want to look like one of the stud athletes,
Yeah.
Derrick Henry, or whoever it may be,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
you're
So
good.
I said, all right, so let's play this out. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine that you're showing up for your training session. And as you're showing up for your session, I just finished training that athlete you told me about. So I just finished training LeBron. Now LeBron's there, and he's there in his shorts and a cutoff, and you're going to look at him and you're going to go, oh my God, that's what I want to look like. Would the next sentence out of your mouth be, I bet you he eats a lot of Fruit Loops and had a Taylor and egg and cheese for breakfast? No, but that's what you have on your food log that you gave to me and you told me you had for breakfast. Now, you weren't gifted with his DNA, neither was I, because if we were, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But if you think you're just going to show up and look like that when he's putting in that kind of effort, he spends over $1 million a year to take care of his body, right? And you think you're just going to show up as a high school kid and look like that? You have to, like, put in perspective, you can't have that expectation. And so that is a way for not me yelling at you and saying, oh, you eat like crap, you got to do better. It's me saying, like, what did you think was going to happen? Did you really think you're just going to wake up and look like that one day? Because he doesn't do that, and he's one of the best in the world.
You know what I like the most about that, Eric, is that you're teaching not by telling. I feel like so often people think like you think about some of your maybe not as good teachers or like in any of the sense, like they just tell you, they just lecture, lecture, lecture. But the questions is such a key piece about the leadership, right? And I find myself like all the time, just because I also know the questions are important, but half the time I'm asking people. I know on this podcast, like I ask most of the questions, but like when I go to like someone else's podcast, sometimes like I end up asking a question by accident almost because it is such a good way to learn because then you as like the mentor learn more about how you can help them, right? And I just said all that because that was a perfect response of where you're not just lecturing them, but you're figuring out in their situations what may be happening and how best they could take it. 'Cause like you even just use the reference of like basketball by just kind of observing and like knowing, oh, basketball might be a good way to frame it versus something else.
Yeah, if you come to me as an athlete day one, Gabe, and I say, well, why are you here? Like, what are you looking to accomplish? And 9 times out of 10, well, I want to be faster. Okay, well, what do you want to be faster for? And well, I want to do this. Well, what does that allow you to do? Well, it allows me to do this. Well, what do you mean by that? And I'm gonna keep nailing it down until I find out what the real reason is. And then my next question is, well, why aren't you fast in the first place? Why aren't you fast now? Well, I don't know. Well, let's figure that out and let's break it down methodically. Instead of me just saying, oh, you want to be fast? Let me show you my special speed program and show you how smart I am and all the different speed drills I know. Because we could go through that whole process and you're not going to get any faster because I don't know why you're not fast in the first place. And part of that is my job is being the um, kind of the person, the architect of your program and the general contractor of your program. But ultimately, I want to know from you, like what's holding you back? Because it may have nothing to do with doing speed drills.
And I mean, you kind of take the words out of my mouth where I know a couple places or like places I used to be. And it is almost that sense of like, oh yeah, come do this, or like I see people do that, like, yeah, come do this. And then you go and it's like the workout right away. And it's, how was it? And you're like, do you know anything about me? Or like, I have some friends who are like, and at a different gyms and they're like, yeah, I was just taking on this guy right away. And I thought I was gonna like talk to him some, but they just had me. Went and did a workout, and like I was like, I mean, yeah, man. Sometimes like that's what you do. Like he's like, I know, but like we don't ever sit down and talk about it or anything. I was like, oh, I was like, I don't. Each gym's different, I guess, but it just goes back to your figuring out what is working, what's not working is just as important of a question, really.
Yeah, it's and the mistake that a lot of people in my industry, and I'll include the rehab industry, physical rehab industry's world, included in that world, is that it's not about, they make it about them. That it's not about you. It's about my training method or my treatment modality, and it's not about you. When you walk in the door, Gabe, it's about you. It's, you came here to help, for me to help you, not for you to learn my magic program, because the magic of my program is that there is no magic to it. And so, like I was just telling a story to somebody the other day about, I had a pro baseball pitcher that I was working with, and he had a minor off-season surgery. He needed to get some physical therapy because he needed to get some manual work, and his doctor insisted that he go see his physical therapist. Now, I kind of knew of the clinic he was going to, and I said, look, here's exactly what's going to happen when you walk in the door. And I literally painted it out for him step by step. And he texted me halfway through the session. He's like, I can't wait to get out of here. And I'm completely freaked out. Everything you said is absolutely true. He said, I'm getting the same exact treatment as this 80-year-old lady who's here with me. I throw the ball 95 miles an hour. She's got a frozen shoulder and just wants to be able to reach the can of soup in her top shelf. So like, they never made it about him. They made it about, you came in, if you have a shoulder problem, everybody gets this. Doesn't matter who you are, what you're looking to accomplish. And the same thing happens in my field. You come in for speed, we're putting out the speed ladder, and everybody's getting the same 10 speed exercises that everybody else got.
Oh yeah, don't even get me going on the speed stuff because I've been helping a guy start up a like speed gym locally here, and so it's taking a whole different like kind of philosophy than just doing the speed ladders and stuff. And yeah, you just get me going on that one. Just how it does need to be individualized and personalized and help them out. Um, Within all that, Eric, this will lead me into some next stuff. I love talking about this stuff clearly, and I think you do. Obviously, you do too. Within so you're still training, right, to this day, right? I would assume still,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Not as much as I used to, but yes. And then I also have a fair amount of my clients now that, that I doing something that I never could do before is where I do more hybrid training, where I do both virtual and in-person training, where it allows me to work with people that I never would have had the chance to work with before, because I can work with people from around the world through my app, where I could never do that before. You had to come to New Jersey and see me physically. So, but I am still coaching. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm very glad you brought up the app because I saw it as I was looking into you and stuff, and I saw you had the app, and I just want to make sure that was still happening. So yeah, you have even evolved your services even more, so you can provide value to more people by having that app. And I saw it did like nutrition and fitness, right? Like it had both.
Does everything:
Yeah,
nutrition, fitness, mindset, everything is all inclusive in there. Yeah.
that's pretty cool. So you're training in person, you have your app for hybrid, and then you're doing the consulting, right?
Correct.
And
Yes.
who is that usually with? Because that was something I couldn't really find, but I think that'll help me kind of navigate a few other things that I want to ask you and kind of pick your brain on and just kind of, yeah. So who
Sure.
is that kind
So,
of with?
okay. So the coaching and training for, the first 20 plus years of my career was for anybody and everybody. But it was usually, the bulk of it was performance based. It was athletes and teams and organizations. Um, and then as far as the teaching and consulting, that's always been personal trainers, fitness coaches, strength and conditioning, performance coaches, physical therapists, that sort of thing. So that's kind of the two worlds. Now, in my coaching, I've started to transition out of the performance world. One, just from a logistics and scheduling standpoint, it's a grind.
Yeah.
It's logistically tough to handle, and I've kind of been there and done that. And so I noticed in the last 4 or 5 years that I had a certain clientele that kept coming to me, and some of them, ironically, were my former athletes. And it was basically guys who were, late 30s, early 40s, and beyond, who want to still stay active and competitive and fit, but they're kind of broken down. The program that they did in college doesn't work anymore. They don't quite know what to do. They don't know how to adapt their training now that they're 51 years old or
Yeah, a
whatever it
little
may
little
be.
older.
And so that's where I've kind of pivoted, and that's where I created my latest project, which is Eterno Athletics, which is targeting guys over 40. But it's the same approach. I just was working on a post that in 1 week, this past week, I saw literally for 3 new clients that I started up, that I did assessments on. I had a 16-year-old kid who's a defensive lineman who's looking to go to a big Power 4 school.
Hmm.
I had a
Power 4.
50.
It's not Power 5
Uh,
anymore.
I don't even can't keep track anymore. That's what he told me.
No, no,
I'm just
yeah. No,
telling you
you're
what he
you're
told
fully
me.
right.
So,
I
yeah,
I didn't even think about it until you said it. They took out one of the conferences, so it is Power 4. That's the first time I've heard that. It's not, I don't think it's Power 5
yeah.
anymore. All right,
Well, because
continue.
I think the Pac-12 became the Pac-2, but that'll confuse everybody, even me. So I had him. I had another guy who's he's in his early 50s, who's had constant back pain and shoulder pain, who just wants to be able to play pickleball and golf, and be able to work out without hurting himself. And then I had somebody else who had their father, who is 80 and plays golf 3 times a week, wants to stay active and live as long as he can. So I had that entire spectrum of new clients start within 1 week. And I say it was the same um, recipe, but a different menu. Like the same recipe of, like, I'm going to find out where you're at. I'm going to find out what are your weak links. I'm going to try to address those, and I'm going to put together a plan to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. That's the recipe is the same regardless of who you are on that spectrum. The actual menu is going to be a little bit different. I'm not giving the same thing to the 80-year-old that I'm going to give to the 16-year-old, because he doesn't have to be ready for the same type of environment. He's not, going against 300-pound linemen. He doesn't have to have the amount of speed or power that kid has. But we're still going to get them stronger. We're still going to get them fit. We're still going to get them to move as well as possible. So that, like I said, that the recipe is still the same. It's just that the end menu becomes a little bit different depending on what environment I need to send you out into.
Man, that's good. Same recipe, different menu. Because I'm just thinking back to the things like I do more on the mental side, and it's like, okay, for like the younger kids, middle school, high school, parents, just workers. It's different, slightly different things, but it comes back to the same stuff. And it's almost the same framework you did and have data to drive it and everything else. So that's awesome to hear because one thing I was going to get your viewpoint on, and it ties right into that. This was probably one of the last things I had was like what I do basically kind of my end pitch, like my elevator pitch, is just like improve the confidence and performance in both sports and life. And so I see this everything we talk about in the athletics, and you learn so much from it, but it is so much just as much in life and like just your job and anything else in the sense. And this is like perfect for you because you have transpired through the whole timeline. You've done so many different things. What are some of those biggest takeaways that you can see through? Because now you are more of the consulting coaching, like coaching, not coaching coaches, I guess. My bad.
Mm-hmm.
Not coaching training. So like you're doing the whole gauntlet here. Some of the biggest takeaways that you have, if you can think of any off the top of the back of your head, that'd be awesome.
In terms of lessons,
And yeah, and lessons, kind of
mm,
just like
mm.
things that have helped or that you see like improve the confidence performance because it does go just as much in sports and athletics as life. So like that you've from all the way from your little teams to your NFL to your coaches, your coaching and anything from the sense.
Okay, so we used to have you got me thinking about like what some of my team policies used to be
Yeah,
when I
let's
had
hear
some of
it.
the teams when we had team culture building, and we would have certain rules, and we would have to change the language slightly depending on the level that I was working with. But
Mm-hmm.
our number one rule, the more crass version we would have would be don't be an asshole. The cleaned up version was don't be a problem, right? Is that most things can be solved with that. Like just don't get kicked out of class, don't fail your class, show up on time, like just don't be a problem. Like you're just nothing's going to be better by you being a problem. And so that's if you're the quarterback on the high school team, like just don't be a jerk, like don't be an idiot, because it drains everybody. Don't be the person. I always say, when if you show up someplace and you see this person or you see their car sitting there and you're like, I got to deal with this guy. Don't be that guy, right? Just don't be that guy. You drain people's energy, right? And that was the second thing, is that every room you walk into, you're either adding energy into the room or you're taking energy away. And I said, if you're taking energy away from our room, I'm taking you out of the room. And I have thrown star athletes out of weight rooms many times and said, I'm not allowing you to take down the rest of the room. Because the way it works is, if let's say we're doing a conditioning drill and now all of a sudden, Gabe, you're next to me and you start going a little bit quicker, what's going to naturally happen by osmosis? I'm going to start going a little quicker. You know what the guy next to me is going to start doing? He's going to start working a little harder. And just because Gabe made the decision to be better, he made the entire energy in the room change. But it also works the other way as well. That's why I'm not letting you be that cancer drag sign. The other rule I actually steal from Trevor Moawad, who's a well-known sports psychologist that unfortunately passed away from cancer, but has a great book out that I really enjoyed. And one of his tenets that he had, and he would use this with teams, is don't say dumb shit out loud. Like don't say stupid things out loud. And what that is, that comes down to the power of self-talk. Like, oh, we suck. Oh, this is hard. And anytime I hear an athlete say, oh, this is hard, and I go over and say, this sucks, doesn't it? I'm like, yeah, this sucks. I go, you know what sucks worse? Being hurt, sitting in the training room and missing your whole season. You know what else sucks even worse than that? Sitting on the bench. You know what really sucks is losing every game. So this exercise doesn't suck that much, because if it's going to help us not do those other things, trust me, I'll take a little suck now as opposed to those other three things. So just don't say dumb things out loud, because nothing is getting better from that. When we always have that first practice that's super, super hot outside,
Yeah.
I would, and it's super humid. I'd stop the drill and I'd bring everybody in. I said, does anybody not know it's hot out? Did you need Joe in the front to tell you it's hot? then Joe, shut your mouth. We all know it's hot. You saying it's hot only makes it worse, right? So you don't need to say the obvious. Don't say dumb things out loud. We're not gaining anything from that. If anything, we're getting worse because no one wants to hear you complain it's hot. We already know it's hot, or it's cold, or it's hard, or it's difficult, or it's tiring. Or, nobody needs to hear it. We already know that. Don't state the obvious. Don't say dumb things out loud. So those were kind of like the big three things that we would do. And then the last piece of it was, and this kind of ties back to something I said earlier, is one of my main themes I would always have with the teams was, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about us. If it's a team, right? If I'm talking about, being a better coach, clinician, so forth, it's not about you. It's about them. You're here to serve them and be of service. If you're going to sell service, be of service. Don't make it about you, make it about them. If it's a team, it's not about either of us. It's about us and what is the greater good of the team.
Man, you're just giving me so many refreshers and so many good points. Don't be a problem. Don't take energy. Don't say dumb things out loud. And what did I miss? Was there one more? Or those were the big three, and then you just added
Those are the
on.
big three, and then last one is it's not about you.
It's about
right. It's not about you.
who
It's
you're
either
helping
it's who you're helping or it's about us, depending on what the environment is.
I mean, those are things to take away. Would you have them on your wall back in the day, or like when you were
in the weight room? That was the rule, and we had other little things too, like we had one of my big rules was respect the room, right? Don't show up late, right? Don't show up with your shoes untied. If you showed up, it was a big thing. I'd yell at kids all the time. They'd have their shoes untied. I said, if it was a state championship game, would you tie your shoes? They're like, oh, yeah. I go, well, how do you think we get to a state championship game? By you tying your shoes today. And I said, if you don't tie your shoes today, it means you don't respect this. You only respect the state championship. Well, you're never getting there if you don't respect today. So tie your shoes.
Yep, you got to be doing the things that you would be doing at that situation to get to that situation, right? That's how it works.
Yeah.
Just like how you were reading everything, learning everything you could back when you were just starting out, back when it's like, oh, what are you doing? And it just kept evolving you to where you are now and all the opportunities you've been given, Eric. So this is awesome. And not given, that you worked for, right? Obviously, you've very much worked for it. So that's great to hear. Do you have any other last things, one final take home, whatever you could think of before we kind of wrap it up here?
I think we hit on a lot of them. The biggest thing is that I will ask athletes, and the biggest thing when I'm teaching, when I'm coaching someone, or if I'm teaching coaches and clinicians, we actually just talked about this on our weekly mentorship call last week, is one of the best ways you can motivate somebody is to say, is a simple word, is simple sentence, just say, is that your best? And most people, that's not going to sit well. They're not going to be, sometimes we're like, yeah, that's all I got. Very rarely they're going to say that. They're like, nah, I know I could have done better. That's not me saying you suck, Gabe. You got to work harder. You got to do, it's me just saying like, I think you're better than that. Do you think you're better than that? And that's really the essence of it. And so if you could be a coach, if you could be a trainer, and you just get used to saying that word, that phrase, say, is that the best you got? That was your best? And you'll be amazed at what people will do. Because not only are they going to want to work harder, but they're also realizing that like, hey, this guy thinks that I'm actually better than that. And so I appreciate that. Right. We live in, as you said, with phones and everything. It's I'm comparing myself to them, and they're cooler. They have nicer abs. They go on better vacations. They have a cooler car, and it's always this comparison thing. And to flip that on its head and say like, you're better than that, right? That could be game changing, especially if you get that young kid who's unsure of themselves, who doesn't have that identity like we talked about earlier. And now they can start to get some confidence like, no, I think I can be better than that. And I'm going to put in the work to be better than that. Nobody's going to give it to me. I'm going to actually do it. I'm going to earn it.
And I'm all about super quick actionable things. Just call them tips, tricks, tools that they can go use right away in their game. And I think you just ended on a great one. Just asking a teammate, asking yourself, is that your best? You know what I mean? That's perfect. How can people find you, Eric? If anyone had questions or interested in what else you're doing,
Sure, thank you. So the best hub is just go to my website, which is my name, which is Eric Degati, EricDagati. On there, you got a bunch of different things you can take advantage of. I have all the information about all those different, coaching programs um, and the professional coaching that I do through principles of program design for coaches and trainers and clinicians. And then things you could take advantage of is there's on my homepage, there's something called Ask Eric. You got a training question, just drop it in there. That goes to my email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can with an answer. And if I don't have the answer, I'll show you where you can find it. And the other thing I have is for people who are looking into coaching. Um, a lot of people aren't sure if they actually need it. So I have what's called a program audit. So you can go and submit your program. I have, I'll take a limited amount of these each month where Gabe, you're like, I don't know if my program's any good. So you could actually submit your program to me and we'll jump on a strategy call and say, okay, here's what I think of your program. Sometimes it's great. Keep doing what you're doing. It's working. Sometimes it's like, this is not what you need and we need to revisit some things. So that's the couple things that you can get out of there, as well as the last piece is something I started about 2 years ago with my partner in the Principles of Program Design. Is we have a podcast off of that called the Principles of Performance, where we interview the top people in my field, from mental performance to strength and conditioning, and we've had some of the biggest names in my industry on there, and we do that show every week.
Yeah, I saw that on your website, and most of the things you said is I like your website. I really do. That's why, and I'll put it in the description. So thanks for sharing all that, Eric. And if you don't got anything else, then I'll just close this one out.
Awesome. Thank you
Cool.
very much for the opportunity and the time.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on the Athlete's Health podcast. I really liked it, and that's all I have, folks.